Welcome. It's me, it's my chaotic here, and today I decided to make a short tutorial on what I called how to, and now I'm going to demonstrate it and write it, Steve mode. So what is Steve mode essentially? The idea of Steve mode is that I can draw onto my picture, my webcam picture, and share some information. And I can share that information in the form of another webcam picture. So I can share exactly this using Zoom or Skype or whatever video conferencing e-learning tool I'm using. And I don't have to share my screen. So if someone else is sharing his or her screen, I can simply have my video at hand and I can say, oh, I'm going to switch from my normal video that everyone can see to something where I'm going to share some notes and ideas. This is really convenient because in a video conferencing software, no one has to stop screen sharing, another person has to start screen sharing, permissions have to be made. All not very nice and convenient. Steve mode, however, is really nice and convenient, and it's way easier than what you think. So what we have to do for Steve mode is essentially achieve three different things here. I'm going to write them down, and the first one we're going to achieve is to actually get my drawing into my system somehow. Call it input. My solution in this case is a rather simple one, so I am going to use Microsoft Whiteboard. The second thing we have to do is actually combine this drawing with my webcam. So this combination, what I'm using for that in my case is OBS Studio. I hope you know that one already. It's open source software, free for all major platforms, and it's great to do lecture recording and all different sort of things. And the third thing we have to achieve is actually get all of that as a webcam so that I can use it in other kinds of software like Zoom or Skype. And what I'm using for this is called OBS. So it's a plugin. It's called Virtual Cam. I'm doing this video now in not the first iteration, and my drawing is kind of getting worse. It's getting better. Anyway, I will cover all of these steps now and mention a couple of tips and caveats for all of these steps. But just looking at this on this side, actually, a selection of software here, you probably already know how the tool works and can replicate this setup for yourself if you want to. So let's talk about drawing and Microsoft Whiteboard first. You can use a variety of sketching applications that work for you. I decided to go for Microsoft Whiteboard for a couple of reasons, actually. The first one is the app works really well. We probably all know them from TK. It synchronizes in real time across different devices. So what I actually have here is on this PC where my OBS Studio is running and my webcam is recording from, a window of Microsoft Whiteboard open. You can see it right here. But this is not where I'm drawing. I'm drawing on another second device, and Whiteboard is extremely fast in synchronizing. So you can see while I'm drawing a stroke, a line here, it synchronizes the line while I'm drawing. It's, in my opinion, way faster than OneNote and most of the other applications. It's also relatively simple from my perspective, so this is the one I'm using right now. There are a couple of things you want to consider when using any sort of application. And the first one is the contrast from what you write to the background. So when I'm usually writing, I tend to dim down my video picture a little bit, so my background is rather dark compared to the normal video window. So I want to have bright colors to draw. So what I did is here for the case of whiteboard, I selected a background, a dark one. So also when I'm drawing on my mobile device here, I actually get a good idea how the contrast looks like, how the final picture is going to look like, which is good. Side note, this black background here is actually not completely black. It has the hexadecimal color code, I believe 1F, 1F, 1F. We will actually need that later. So this about the background. Another thing you may notice here is that we have actually certain window elements, for instance here in the bottom, the controls that you can see here, that I'm not sharing when I'm sharing this sort of picture. And you will also note that I have some corner markers in the corners, like have to find this one up in the left. Okay, and they are there for the simple reason that the application of whiteboard that I'm running on this PC, in this case it's running on the full HD monitor, will show a different area of the actual whiteboard than my mobile device does. And by just having some edge markers, I actually know which particular part of this whiteboard I'm really capturing on my PC, and I can use my mobile device and zoom and pan to get the same area here. Okay, so that is really helpful in this case. And I think this part already answers the question on how we kind of get like a nice drawing in our system. The second question is, how do we get drawing and webcam together? And the obvious answer is OBS Studio. In case you don't know OBS Studio, this here is the website. It's a really great tool for all sorts of platforms. I can highly recommend it. Download it, use it, and now I'm going to start a recursion. Be warned. So now I'm actually showing my OBS Studio screen. So what we have here on the left-hand side are actually different scenes, and there is a scene that I called Whiteboard plus Video. And as we see, when I switch to it, you won't see what I'm sharing anymore. Also, when I switch to my video only, you won't see what I'm sharing. So I'm going to use a different scene than the one I'm normally using, just for the sake that you can see what I'm doing in this case. The important part here is our small sources window. The important thing to note about the sources window is whatever is at the bottom has the lowest priority and is overwritten, overdrawn by what comes on top. So now you can see my webcam in the lower right corner. If I move it down below the video capture, then my video capture will overlay this webcam actually. So what we will want to do is actually capture the webcam. This is our basic video. Here in this case, it's just a small tiny area, but be aware that I have this profile where I have a full-scale webcam. What we then want to do is kind of dim this webcam a tiny bit down. And the way we can do it is by adding another source to it, and I have to find it, the color source. I will use an existing one for the simple sake that you can see what I'm doing, because now I added this color source. It's now here on top of everything, and it makes everything darker, right? If I move it below, will not have an influence at all. If I move it up, it will make everything quite dark in this case. So I will actually put, this will not work. I will leave the color source up here. I will make it a bit smaller so that it only overlaps my actual video window in this case. And I will show you what I have in this color source. First thing, if we go into the properties, is that you can see the color, which is actually just black. Want to dim it down so it gets darker, so I need black. But it's not only black. If we go to the filters of this color source, we will also see that I have a color correction filter. We can add that by hitting the plus button and checking the color correction. And the only thing that I adjusted here is the opacity that you can see here. By default, actually, by adding a black color source, you will just see black and nothing else. If If I go for, say, 70% opacity, you can see that my picture webcam window is still there, but dimmed down a lot. I can also adjust that, maybe just do a slight bit of dimming, whatever you see fit. And this way we have dimmed down our webcam video. So this is the first important step. The next step that we have to do is actually add whiteboard. For that you can use a display capture. I actually recommend doing a window capture because the whiteboard application has always the same name. And a window capture makes sure that you're not accidentally showing any other windows that you don't want to show. Bear in mind, with the window capture, we still have to make sure that whiteboard is running before we start OBS Studio, otherwise it may not work. And we have to make sure normally that the whiteboard window is actually visible, because otherwise OBS Studio cannot really capture it. So right now my whiteboard window is in the background and I could do a drawing and it would not show these drawings here. At least it's not guaranteed to be shown. So I'm going to use the window capture. I already have an existing one. I will use that one. And you can see, hey, my whiteboard is already there in Create, Glory, and Recursion. I will show you the details here. So we have the properties and you can see I selected the whiteboard executable here. And that's all we have to do to capture the whiteboard. If you want to make it nice and fancy, I recommend adding some filters here. Two filters are important. The first one is the color key. Again, it's added like we have seen before. And this color key is usually there to do some green screening. So usually the key color is green. Some green here. I changed this color to the background color of my whiteboard, which is 1F, 1F, 1F. And by selecting this color, you can see that my whiteboard will become kind of transparent. You actually cannot see it here, but if I would select actually green, which is the pre-selection, you can see in this preview here that my whiteboard is not really transparent. It has the usual dark background. But if I select a custom color and I set it to the same background color as the whiteboard app, it will become transparent. Yay! The second thing I'm doing here is a filter for cropping and padding. And the idea here is that I want to get rid of all these window decorations that I usually have. So what you can see is actually in the top we have the title bar or windows. I don't really want to see that. So what we can do here is 35 works well on a full HD monitor for me. I already moved that picture a bit, but at the bottom you would usually also see the Windows taskbar. We don't want that. I'm using 50 for that. That works relatively well. And we also have UI elements here like this going back button. I don't like that, so I'm going to use 100 here. And on the right hand side we also have buttons like my avatar and so on. We can also get rid of that. I tend to keep a little bit of that and just setting it to 100. Now we have cropped this image. What we can also do is actually, now that it's a little bit smaller than full HD, move it around where we want to have it. Maybe even scale it up so that it fills our whole scene. This will really then make it look that way in the end. So this is essentially how we combine webcam and the drawing. So that kind of, if I may do so, concludes this part here. Again, the caveats that I mentioned, make sure that your whiteboard application is started before you start OBS Studio, otherwise things may go wrong. Make sure that your whiteboard application is somewhere visible on some monitor, because if it's hidden, the whiteboard application may not update itself and the new drawings won't be updated as you use it. And then we get to the last part, which is actually how do we get the stuff out as a webcam. For that, there's this plugin that I already mentioned. What I have to do now is clean up the mess that I have done here. I did it everywhere. I will clean up the mess. So what we have here is the website of OBS Virtual Cam. That's a plugin for OBS Studio. You download it, you install it. It works for Windows. I'm not sure about other platforms because it only says Windows here. It's on GitHub. You can try to compile it for something else. Maybe there are other plugins for macOS and Linux. I don't know. I've heard there's at least something for Linux there. You download it, you install it, and it may not work. And the reason for it not working is usually that the virtual cam version has to fit the OBS Studio version. So wait with the OBS Studio updates and always give the developers of virtual cam a couple of days actually to potentially fix breaking changes and make it compatible again. When it's compatible, let's do some recursion again. You will see that when you start OBS Studio and you hit Tools in the menu bar, you will have an option that says Virtual Cam. If it's there, congrats, it works. If not, try playing with different versions. If you open these settings of Virtual Cam, you will see that we have a couple of options here. The first option is called Auto Start. I highly recommend to check that one. That will cause your virtual webcam to start working the moment you launch OBS Studio. You don't have to hit start recording, you don't have to hit start streaming or do anything. You just launch the application, it will work. Just launch OBS Studio, minimize it, forget about it, it will work. Then we have this option for the target camera. Here you can specify a name, the default is fine. This is then the webcam that you will use in your video conferencing software instead of your normal webcam. You actually cannot use your normal webcam because it will be already taken and captured by OBS Studio here. You can adjust the number of buffered frames. 3 is the default setting and 3 frames is okay. It will ensure that your picture and your voice is still pretty synchronous here. Okay, these are the settings for Virtual Cam, and that's essentially all you have to do in OBS Studio. So at this point, we are kind of already done with the webcam. We'll just give you like an example on how you can actually include the webcam in a particular software. So I'm going to fire up Zoom. Here we have Zoom. We can go into the settings of Zoom. Dragging over the window, we have the video settings, and here you can see I selected the OBS camera. I would select my normal video camera. Well, it doesn't work because it's currently taken by OBS Studio. So if you have any issues about your webcam not being available in OBS Studio, maybe your video conferencing software is still running and capturing that camera. So you want to have the OBS camera. You also want to make sure, in order to avoid problems with your drawings, that you're not mirroring your video here. Keep it original, not mirrored. If you really need mirroring, there are options in OBS actually to mirror the picture. There are filters for that. You also want to make sure that you're not having automatic adjustments that correct for low lighting conditions, because they will actually mess up with your contrast. Another caveat that I tend to mention quite often is actually that you want to make sure that the audio capture device that you're using, just realized that I should remove this color so it's here, it's annoying, that the audio source that you use in your video conferencing software is not the same than the one you're using in OBS Studio. If you only use OBS Studio, for instance, to do this sort of Steve mode, you don't need an audio source here at all. Again, there might be this issue that OBS Studio might capture this audio source and your audio is not available in your video conferencing software anymore. That is probably not what you want. So these are my few tips and tricks to get the magic Steve mode running. And that concludes the session. Have fun.